Hey everyone. So if you know me, you know that I work with a lot of women with Hashimoto's disease. And one of the most common questions that I get is, Whitney, what the hell is up with my antibodies? And it's a common struggle that women will go through periods of time where they're feeling good, and then all of a sudden they have a flare and they don't know why. I see it over and over again in my practice. I've experienced it myself, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir right now, right? I imagine there's a lot of you out there who have had a similar experience. So I want to tell you a story because it illustrates so clearly how sometimes we can miss the forest for the trees when we're trying to solve the problem of elevated thyroid antibodies. So I have a client named Kristi who, when she found me, she really was at the end of her rope. And what she described to me is what I call the Hashimoto's roller coaster. She would feel pretty good, have decent energy, okay libido. She'd start to feel really good in her favorite jeans, and that might go on for weeks or maybe even a couple of months, and then the crash would come. She'd start to wake up exhausted, the pounds would start creeping onto her hips, and her libido would just, hit the tank. And how she described it was, a 30-year-old trapped in an 80-year-old woman's body. So every time this happened, Kristi would go to her doctor. The first thing she would think of was, I gotta check my thyroid numbers. And they'd run the labs, of course. And she would hear pretty much the same thing every time. Yes, your thyroid antibodies are elevated. It's probably due to stress. We're gonna keep an eye on that. In the meantime, I'm going to increase your Synthroid dose and maybe you'll feel better. Sometimes the increase in the dosage would make her feel a little better. Oftentimes it wouldn't. But eventually Kristi just got really frustrated with this cycle and she knew she had to do something different. And so she started looking around and she found me. And listening to Kristi, I totally got where she was coming from. Not only is it a story that I've heard over and over again in my practice, but I've been stuck on the roller coaster myself. I know what it's like to go through periods of time where you're feeling good and then all of a sudden the wheels fall off the bus. You have no clue what's happening or why. And then, of course, you go see your doctor and you get the same old Band-Aid approach. If you've been tuning in to any of my videos, you probably know by now that elevated thyroid antibodies have a lot more to do with underlying hidden dysfunctions than they have to do with the thyroid itself. So part of my job is to help my clients find out what those underlying issues are. What's triggering their antibodies in the first place? So Kristi and I got to work. She implemented some of the preliminary dietary and lifestyle changes that I recommended while we waited for her test results. Even though Kristi was totally committed to doing anything she needed to do to heal her Hashis, she was a little taken aback when I suggested that we run a stool test. She understood the need to, run the thyroid labs and the adrenal and hormone labs. That she could wrap her brain around, but she couldn't really understand why a stool test was necessary. But being the awesome person Kristi is, she totally trusted in the process. And sure enough, we discovered that Kristi had a parasite that's known to trigger Hashimoto's, and she also had bacterial overgrowth of very specific strains that are known to trigger autoimmune flares. So Kristi's test showed that she had a parasite called Blastocystis hominis. It's very, very common, and it's a huge Hashimoto's trigger. She also had an H. pylori infection and overgrowths of Prevotella, Klebsiella. All these guys can contribute to triggering a Hashi's flare. So basically, Kristi had a perfect Hashimoto's storm brewing in her poop, and no amount of Synthroid was ever going to fix that. And once we got an anti-parasite protocol in place, antibacterial protocol in place, Kristi got rid of her H. pylori in just 30 days. And after a couple of more months, the parasite was gone and all of that bacterial overgrowth had settled down to normal levels again. But more importantly, Kristi got off the Hashimoto's roller coaster. She got her energy back and she felt a happiness in her body that she thought was gone forever. And this isn't unusual. I've seen this happen with clients over and over and over again. And it happened for myself in my own Hashimoto's journey. Like so many other women, Kristi made the decision to turn her back on those Band-Aid approaches that weren't serving her anymore. And instead, she decided to finally find out what was causing her flares in the first place. And for Kristi, the answer was in her poop. Inside my thyroid reboot method, we focus on identifying those underlying dysfunctions that are at the root of your thyroid disorder. And running a comprehensive stool test is always part of the investigation. If you're stuck on the Hashimoto's roller coaster and you're ready for a change, go ahead and drop your favorite emoji into the comments and I'll be in touch with you to see if my program is a good fit. So whether you're on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, doesn't matter, just shoot me an emoji and I'll reach out and get in touch. But if you're not ready yet and you want to learn a little bit more, that's totally cool. Go over to my blog. I've got a lot of information there. And my latest blog is about Kristi, but it also goes into some more detail about other things that we look for when we run a stool test that can give us so much information about what's going on with your thyroid. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.